appreciate you all coming in as well. Shall we get started, Tanya?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So I am very pleased to say that I'm joined today by Nikki Kimball, my education consultant from J2E. I don't know if you've got your mic on, Nikki, if you wanted to say hello.
I have. Hello, everyone. Thank you. I'm here.
It's brilliant. You might be hearing more from Nikki soon as well, actually, in the coming weeks ahead of new webinars that we do. It'd be really nice to get Nikki involved. She's been extremely busy with working with the Welsh Government and all of the schools in London and lots of groups of schools around the UK doing webinars there. So hopefully she'll have some free time soon to join me on leading on some of these webinars. Please, Nikki, I run out of voice on these things. Okay. So Nikki's going to be in the background. She'll also be able to answer questions as we go. So if you've got any questions, put them on the chat and Nikki can either type them in or read them out as we go. And I would really like it, Nikki, if you could stop me in my tracks if you think I've missed anything that is of worthy note during this seminar. As per normal, everybody, if you've got burning questions, put them on the chat. And Nikki will help me to remind me to answer those as we go if necessary, or we'll answer those at the end. Should take 35-40 minutes to get through this webinar today. Okay, so Tanya asked me if I could look at the writing process and in schools in Malta, primarily because there's a whole bunch of features in J2E that are really great at making the writing process fun, interesting and engaging for your students and also for you. There's a lot of ways that it's going to save you time and effort and energy, and really makes the process a true process of actually sort of a flow of things that children need to do if they're not familiar with the writing process, or they need to be, as we always need to, continuously remind them of the importance of the process of writing. So my interpretation of the writing process, I was given some basic context, thank you for that by Tanya, is sort of a 5-step approach. We'll just touch on that briefly so that my understanding is this. If yours is different, please let me know. For pre-writing, the students are able to be put together what they want to write in a plan, choose an idea and a topic. Very importantly, to be able to select the purpose of your writing and who's going to be reading the things that you're going to be writing about. And in the pre-writing phase, to be able to think up some good ideas and to be able to put your information in a way that is organized. Nikki told me earlier on that one way that you can use our tools is to mind map that information, and J2E5 is a good way of doing that. Next phase of the writing process is to start writing, to be able to put your ideas into sentences and paragraphs, and to ensure that you are following everything that you've put in your pre-writing plan into action so that you can create your first draft of the things that you're writing about. That's the plan of the writing phase. The revision phase is where you can collaborate and work in groups or on your own and really think about ways that you can improve on the composition that you've put together, an opportunity to reflect on it and to edit that into your work. Proofreading is a favorite part of the writing process for me because it was my father's actual job, and it's always nice to connect things from the real world with the things that students do in the classroom. It's not often that children have an opportunity to actually see a real life job in action when you're in a classroom setting. Why are you learning these things? My father's job was to proofread, and as a proofreader, he would ensure that spelling was correct, grammar was correct, capitalization was there in order to make a final copy of the work. Now, my father had a very interesting, this is slightly off topic, but my father had a fascinating history in the print trade because he started off as a hot metal press printer. He would carry the physical metal typeset and put it into the cages ready for printing, and it was at that point it was essential that proofreading took place, because the time that you missed correcting your work meant that hundreds of thousands of newspapers going off the printing press would all be incorrect, and that was a huge issue for any publisher of any newspapers. And finally, the last part of that process of writing is the way that you want to put your work together, where it's going to go and how you want to produce it, whether it's going to be in a form of a book or whether you're going to read it out loud in a class, and all of the different bells and whistles that go alongside publishing your work. Each one of these parts of the writing process are equally important, and each one of these parts of the writing process have features in J2E that can facilitate it, can improve it, make it fun, and I'm going to share with you now how to do all of those things. Okay, so starting with the pre-writing phase. So looking at pre-writing, planning what to do. As an educator, you could very easily create a J2E5 document for your students. I threw this together earlier on just as an example of doing that. And what you've got here is what I call the story mountain, where you've got the beginning, explaining the story, what the setting is in this area here, and what happens in the story, where there's a climax in the story, if there are any conflicts happening, and what happened as a resolution. Now, I wasn't too sure if people were aware that you could do this as an educator for your students, and I'm very happy to supply this to you as a template that you could then use with your students. Very simply, what's happened is, if I go popping into J2E5 quickly, let's open J2E5 as a blank document. Now, if I wanted to reproduce that template again in J2E5, how I'm going to do it is this. First of all, I might want to put a picture on the page. There's my mountain. I might want to make it bigger by dragging it around. You get the idea. And then I'll put beginning. And we'll, whoopsie daisy. We'll drag that to the bottom of the page, and we'll put climax at the top of the page, and then resolution at the bottom of the page. Now you might want to put some fancy boxes around it like I did as well. You can do that very simply by putting them in the right place. And if I wanted to duplicate this, I can just copy it with that little plus button and do it again so that we've got those boxes there. So if I wanted to, I could lock this to the page. So I could select everything by doing a Control-A, or I could, using my arrow button, I could simply just drag and select everything on the page there. And over the right hand side, let's go down the bottom here, we've got the lock button. So that's locked everything to the page, which means that I can now add things wherever I want. I can't change anything that's happening on this page, so it's set like a background. Once I've saved that, you know, it's taken me a couple of minutes to put that together. My story mountain template. I've saved that. That sits in my teacher's My Files area, which is here into My Files. But if I want to get my students to encourage them to use this, all I need to do is just click on the little green eye button at the top of that particular file and share it with my students. And again, I can just click on the class that I want to share that with, maybe the whole school. but I'm going to choose my class and go year 3 and 4, my usual suspects. And I don't need to do anything else. Once I've shared it with them, it shows that it's shared there. Those are the people that I've shared it with. If you wanted to share it with just one student, you could. You could just type in the name of the student and it will choose it.
Alistair, can you also show them while you're there how to do collaborative? Because they could do the plan together, basically, in this time when they can't work together physically, at least. They could do the Story Mountain as a collaborative activity.
Yeah, you absolutely can. I was going to talk about collaboration later on, but I'll show you now as well and just give you a little reminder as well of what this is. So what you could do is if you wanted to get your students to work in groups, in pairs, or as a whole class together, you could just choose to make this a collaborative document. Typically, when you have a document like this, and you click on the share button, what happens is it's always automatically set as just as a worksheet. And what that means is the students have their own copy of it. When they save it, they work in that document, they add things they want to, such as they writing in the boxes of the Story Mountain template, and they save it for themselves. But if you change it into a collaborative document, whoever you've got in that document, whoever you've got in the shared with area will be able to add into that document in real time. So they'll be able to see each other's edits, the things that they're adding into it will all go into that document. If you want them to save their own version of that, then you need to click save. You don't have to, because what will happen is if you want them to all work in your version of that document, just leave it as this. But if you want them to save their own version of that document, just click the save button against the class or against the student themselves. So whoever has that save button will not only be able to collaborate with everyone else in that one document, you'll see the writing, you'll see the edits, everything will happen in real time. But if you want them to save it, click the save button. And then that is shared. So that's your starter for 10. And you can do that with any type of template that you've got. I chose, for example, the Story Mountain, but it could equally be another way to plan your story. And again, all I've done is I've just popped this in as a J2E5 document. I've locked it to the page, which means that I can then start writing in my introduction. And to coin one of Nikki's phrases, I've already started to magpie the opening to somebody else's story. So that's ways that you could give some framing to your students when they are in the pre-writing phase. Okay. And then when we're getting into the writing phase, you can then encourage your children to start using full sentences and paragraphs, for example. One of the most important things, though, that when we're looking at, the beginning of the pre-writing phase, it is really important for children to be given the time to talk with each other and listen to each other and to you before, during, and after that pre-writing phase, which is why, as Tanya, you so rightly mentioned, the collaborative nature of this is, really valuable. Because if I'm, I'll do this again with my Story Mountain template that I've got here. The opportunity for collaboration here is excellent, so that children can start to talk and listen to each other and to you during this process. Is if this is a collaborative document, which I made it a collaborative document because if I just click on that little collaboration button at the top of this document, I'll see who's there. But here, everybody who's in that group can all write in this document, but also they could record themselves. So those children that are a little bit reluctant to start writing straight away could just become accustomed to recording themselves speaking. And then they could add that to the page as their own input. Don't worry, it always says that just for a couple of seconds whilst it then converts it into a playable file. So here, every single person, every single one of your children who has the collaboration switched on in this pre-writing activity can not only contribute in audio format, but also listen to each other, having their ideas shared as well. Now, what this does is also a really essential part of the pre-writing process. Is it develops the awareness of pretty much the social nature of writing, and it starts to reinforce in children's understanding the importance of the fact that writing is a form of communication. Maybe that is inferred, maybe that's explicit in what the children are doing here. But using this as a form of communication in the whole process of writing, throughout the whole process of writing, is really important. Now, what's also thoroughly important about the pre-writing task, and also about the whole process of writing with J2E, is the opportunity for teachers to be able to support learners in that process. Now, when a student, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, when a student uses J2E5, if you've given them a writing frame to start with, anything that they save goes into their own My Files, so their version of My Files. But as the teacher, you get to see their My Files in the portfolio of work that gets produced in pupil files. So if I click into pupil file, don't double click on it, I click on it, I can then see my classes and then go and see my students, and then I can go and look at the work that Eli is producing. But once I've looked at the work that Eli is producing in the process of the pre-writing activities or the writing activities, I can have a conversation with him in that process. So, for example, what I might want to do is, just specifically for Eli, I can open up the learning conversation by clicking on the little speech bubble. Every piece of work that Eli produces has the opportunity to do this. So there's my little speech bubble. But I could turn to Eli and say, I could write to him and say something here, but much more powerfully, I could record myself and say, this is coming along really nicely, Eli. Perhaps you could tell me a little bit about the sources of inspiration for your writing today. And once that's in there, again, don't worry, it says can't play sound just for a moment. Once that's in there, the student, Eli in this case, can listen to that comment and reply back to you in exactly the same form. So this is now an ongoing communication that you as the educator can have with each student that can be built on over time, and the student can reflect on over time to make sure that he or she has completed all of the different parts of the feedback that you've got. Let's move back into the writing process. Okay, so the next part of that is the revision process. And an essential part of the revision process, where students can start to form greater sentences and complete paragraphs of their writing, is an opportunity for teachers to be able to provide scaffolds for students. And how you can do that in J2E in J2E5, we've already sort of hinted at here, is in the writing process, you could save a piece of work and work in pairs or groups by sharing the work. Now, another way that you could do that is, I'm going to open a brand new J2E5 document. and I'm going to pretend this is a piece of work that the student has done, but I'm going to add some information into it. As soon as I save my work, watch this. I'll use this as an example. Once I've saved my work, once it's there and saved, I can instantly start to share it without leaving this piece of work. So what I can do is share it with another student, for example. Let's just share it with Josh. And now Josh will be able to see that piece of work because that'll appear in his shared files, and Josh will be able to then continue to work with you in real time in that writing activity. Now you can do that either in pairs, so children could choose who they want to work with themselves, or you could set up groups for them to do that too. One of the things that I talked about in a previous session was the ability to provide checklists. Now, I might have a document where I've done this in the past in one of the sessions, which was postcards. So here is an example of the writing frame for postcards, where you've got the success criteria. So you could include a checklist like this in with your work. So that was lifted from year 3 and 4 from the Maltese curriculum here. And what you could do also, if you were feeling that way inclined, is you could add forms into this, which could be a checkbox, which is just simply a checkbox which they could send to you like this. We might want to remove the actual words checkbox, but we could give it to them like this, so that we could add a checkbox, which means, I'll just do a few of them in turn, a student can just tick the boxes as they go in there and then send it to you. And not only will you see a report of every single student doing that, but you'll also get an email. An email will tell you that your students, and it'll give you the report to show you which students have clicked on the tick boxes, and it'll show you which of those that have ticked all the different things on that list. Let's just come out of there and go back into the writing process. I'm sorry about the change in lighting conditions. It's like the end of days right now. The weather has gone dark and crazy here. Moving on. The other things that I thought about in terms of using J2E in revising your text and providing scaffolds for your students to improve and support their work is using a virtual wall print, so some inspiration and some ideas for your writing. So, for example, if you wanted to write about a character in a J2E5 document, you could simply just search for animals, for example, and perhaps choose some clip art. And you could just simply drop in some pictures onto the screen to give your students an idea of things, of things to start writing about. Not quite sure what's going on there, but you get the idea. Simple ways to introduce an idea to get your children engaged in a character, if you're writing about characters, for example, or a scene for a background, for example. So you might want to have something about scenes. So you might want to put something on the page which gives them an indicator of things to write about. Alternatively, you might want to give them an idea about adapting existing texts. You could simply just drag and drop another text onto the page, make it a collaborative document, and have it as a a document that your students could pull apart and make their own. Further into the revision process, there's a really important part of J2E's J2E5 tools that enables you to easily track pupil process. And that is here at the bottom of the page, and it's called revisions. Now, revisions, if I click on that, hopefully you can see that's a bit small at the bottom of the page. Let's just move it up. Can you see that? The revisions actually shows you what this document looks like at each stage of being saved by the student. So you can see when I was working in it, the very first time I saved it, all the way through to the last time I saved it. Now let's move back. Sorry, I've just zoomed back out. How that works for a student as well is really great, because if I go into J2 Launch and I'm going to look at pupil files, so I'm going to actually look at a student's particular piece of work. Let's pick on Eli again, and I'm going to look at his story here, his pre-write of his zoo story. Now, don't forget, I'm looking at this as a teacher. So I've looked into Eli's work. Now, if I go and look at revisions at the bottom of the page there, he's only done 2 revisions. There was the first one. Okay, so that's what it looked like in the first revision. But in the second revision, all he's done in that particular version is he's added in a picture. But that in itself gives you an opportunity to see the process that your students are making in going from pre-writing into actually writing, and then they will be able to call up the different versions and show the development that they have made. And in doing so, you know, that's also one of the important things of the roles of the teacher in the writing process, is to be able to provide the content for students to develop. And, you know, I just love the idea that in doing that, you could do that on a one-to-one basis, or you could do that in a group or class basis, just by simply using the learning conversations. So if I go back here and I look at Eli, and I want to give him some feedback on his work and to provide some additional content to develop his writing. So here, Eli's got a brain dump of words that he's got. So he's done that in audio format. But here, he might have perhaps recorded a short poem. So one of the instructions could be to, as a writing activity, to be writing a short poem. So here, in providing additional content for Eli, I might think about giving him an example of a famous Spike Milligan poem. One of my favorites that goes, "A lion is fierce, his teeth can pierce the skin of a postman's knee. It serves him right, that because of his bite, he gets no letters, you see." And there, I've simply just provided some additional content for Eli to develop his work further. Okay, so those revisions will work in all parts of every single student's work. What it also does is it version controls the work, and you'll be able to see the last person that saved it in a collaborative document too. So if you made this a collaborative document, you would be able to see which person saved it. So that'll give you a good indication of who has actually contributed into this document. So if you've got a collaborative document like this on the screen, just click on revisions and it'll tell you when it was saved and who saved it as well. Okay, proofreading. My favorite stage here. How can you ensure that your children proofread? Well, one of the most important things to do there is to provide a readily accessible guide. You can see what I did there, can't you? An opportunity for children to be continuously reminded by having this available to them, whether it's on the classroom wall or whether it's within a prepared document as a checklist, as an idea of students to do some simple things in proofreading tasks, such as focusing on each word and to allow them to read aloud. Looking at spelling, looking at different ways to spell the same word. For encouraging children to touch each word as they read, to check for punctuation, to check for spelling, and to check for grammar. An opportunity, even in J2E5, is a simple one of the ways that you can do some proofreading is to use a ruler, because that obviously then means that students can focus specifically on a particular word at a time. So let's change the color of my ruler and I can focus on each word. I can read aloud. I can touch each word and I can use a ruler to ensure that I am focusing and concentrating on a line at a time. And I can work with a partner, because once I'm happy with my work, I could then share it with just one person who will then be able to follow the same steps in proofreading for my work. So why not give that a go and encourage your children to use J2E5 to create a story, a piece of text, and whilst they are in the process of proofreading it themselves, and give someone else that role by simply getting your students to go and click on the share button, choose their partner to work with, and for that student to then come in and edit this work. So now if I go and log in as Eli, let's log in as Eli here. There are the things that Eli has, and there's the story mountain template that Eli has as well, which he can then go and work in with you. Okay, so that's the proofreading phase, and an opportunity to continuously have this as a template that your children could be reminded of. The final part of how J2E5 in particular supports the writing process is in publishing. And it's one of the things that, whilst I was working with teachers in Malta the last time I was there, which seems a very long time ago, during the Embed Awards, was the simple fact of the matter of who your children actually write for. When they're writing in the classroom, who do they write for? Generally, the majority of the time, they are writing for you, their class teacher, which means that no matter what the style of writing it is, it's always going to be read by the same person, you, and fed back by you as well. J2E5 gives you the opportunity to get your children published, and I'm exceptionally proud of the fact that a lot of teachers in Malta are doing this, and I'm going to come and touch on that a little bit more in a second. What you can do in J2E5 is let every single child, every single one of your students, become a published author instantly at the click of a button, to be able to provide a document to a much wider audience for writing. How a student does that is very simple, and I'm going to guide you through that process very quickly now. So I'm going to log on as Eli, and here I am logged in as Eli in a separate window. There you go, there's Eli at the top of the page. And what Eli's going to do is write a story. So very quickly, he might want to say, my story about a lion called Charlie. He might want to put a picture of a lion on the page. And there is his lion. This is a very basic starter of a story for him. He might be jumping a few different steps of the process, but the reason for doing this is so that I can show you how he published this work to a larger, wider audience. All Eli needs to do is press publish. What it will do first is encourage Eli to save his work. So let's press publish. And I'm going to give it a title, Lion Story. Now Eli can just press publish to J2 Webby. And what that has done is it's saved his work and it has then published it, but it won't go anywhere yet. It won't go anywhere until it's gone through the process of review by you, the class teacher. Okay, so do not panic. No work is going to get published anywhere outside of your control until you have looked at it. And we have a tool here that allows you to do that, called J2 Webby. So I'm going to pop back into J2 Launch as a teacher, and I am going to look in J2 Webby. But I could also look in the moderate tile, and that's the little notification window of things that you need to look at as the teacher to moderate before they get approved. It's the same as J2 Webby, but a quick way of getting into J2 Webby, which is where all of the work will go eventually. So let's click on moderate because there's two things in there to moderate. Okay, here we've got things that I need to do as the class teacher. Because I am the class teacher in year 3 and 4, it's telling me that there are posts in moderation in the blog name year 3 and 4. There's two things in there, but also there are some comments to moderate as well, because nobody can comment on a blog until they've been moderated. How I moderate it is simply by clicking on the blog name year 3 and 4, because that's the name of my class. And there is Eli's lion story. 4 things that I can do. I can either get rid of it, have a quick look at it, make it go live on the class blog, or assess it. So if I want to publish it to make it go live, I might have a look at it first. But do note, this is very simple here. It says the name of the work, who made it, which year he or she is in, and when it was last moderated. Sorry, last modified by the student. So the lion story, let's have a quick look at it by pressing preview. And that's what it's going to look like when it's published. I'm happy with that, so I'm going to press publish. Now, what that means to all of your students is when your students go into Just Too Easy, they can click on the tile called J2 Webby, and they can go into their class blog and see each other's work. And what that means is Eli can not only look at other students' work, read their work, but they can also, let's open it up a little bit further by viewing the post, but they can also comment on the work as well. Now I can't because I've got comments turned off, because I've turned them off for Eli, because you can do that. The next thing that I wanted to tell you about was if I go back into here into, into J2E.com, it's now saying that I need still to moderate some other things. I've got two things I need to moderate here, a comment and another blog post. Well, I don't need to do any more blog moderation today. I'm going to look at comments because those are things that I need to check are safe and secure too. So in exactly the same way, I can see who wrote the comment, what they said, and if I'm happy to, I can just press approve and that comment will go live. Now, the most amazing things happen when students see this, because I've seen it live for myself so many times over, is that when children see their work going onto the class blog, two things happen in that own student's mind. Not only do they see that their work reaches a larger audience, because and this is quite interesting, is that that web link could be shared with parents, or that web link could be tweeted, or that web link could be put on Facebook if you wished to, which means that that particular piece of writing, or even just one particular piece of writing with that web link, could then be shared with anybody around the world, or with another school where children could comment on the student's work. So a great way for children to develop an audience and to have a purpose for writing, knowing that once they've clicked publish and they're ready for that work to go live, that you as the class teacher can moderate and approve that work to sit inside a real blog in real time where other people outside of the class can read their work, is hugely motivating to every student. They will want to do it again. They will want to do it better, and they'll want to do it in a different way to produce greater pieces of work. So that is how, using J2E, you can create that audience for writing and give your students a real sense of purpose for the writing activities that they are doing. And it doesn't have to be very complicated. It can be a very simple process without them even realizing it, to give them an opportunity to really express their work in a variety of ways. As promised, finally, for a change, I've stuck to time, and I wanted to hand it over to Nikki and Tanya to see if there were any questions about today's session.
There have been. Well done, Alistair. That was a fantastic presentation. Lots of really useful activities. We've had one question in particular about collaboration. So I think you spoke about it earlier, about setting up sort of J2E5 files that smaller groups of children could work on. And it's just about how you would set that up, because obviously if you added in all the pupils onto the one document, they would then all be working on the same document. So it was just to give a little demo about maybe copying the document and then adding small groups of children into that document so they could collaborate in smaller groups.
Okay, so yes, it does. Put me on the spot here. So what we want, no, it's absolutely fine. It's to ask these awkward questions.
I think you did touch on it earlier, where students could collaborate, so they could share their own document that they'd created from within it. So, you know, if they were working in a pair, they could create the document and then share it with another pupil in class. But it's just how a teacher would set that up instead of the pupils doing it.
Gotcha. Okay, so if a teacher, if I'm going to just go back to one of the things that I created, which was this template, for example. There's two ways that you could do that. You could create this as a document for just a small group of students to work in from within this document without leaving it, or you could do it from my files very simply. Now it's already shared, but if I go back into the share mode again, let's just remove all of the different people that it's shared with. Now I'm going to leave it as a collaborative document, but what you can do is one of two things. You could either add in pupils one at a time and have a group of pupils working in this document because I've just made it available for that specific group. Okay. Alternatively, you can create groups of specific classes. And I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But instead of where I've been typically clicking on classes and using one of the specific classes that's been set up for me, I could create my own teaching class and say if there was a low ability group or a high ability group or a specific group that I want to work on a rotation model on a specific activity, for example, I could have that group predetermined by having, you know, my digital leaders here, for example, only working in that particular document. And how you go about doing that is pretty simple and straightforward. You only have to do this once. And what you do is you go into the dashboard for J2E. My dashboard is here. And then you can go into the secondary tab called Classes. And you can create your own groups of students here by clicking on the little plus button, select a teaching class, give it a name. So writing group 1. Oops. Do that again. Click on the purple folder called teaching class, and we'll call this writing group 1. And click OK. Now my writing group 1 appears here at the bottom of the list of all of my separate classes, like my digital leaders, like my teaching classes, etc. And what I then need to do is click on the little down arrow and start to add people into this group. So I can select a group of students and then add them into the group by clicking OK. And there, whoever I've ticked in there will then add them into that group, which means that next time I go and want to share a file like this and share it, I can then click on the little down arrow, go to my teaching classes, and there's my new group, writing group 1. And only the people in writing group 1 will be able to then see that document. I hope that answers that question.
Fantastic explanation, thank you. Obviously, if you were to share that with different groups, you would have to copy the document first, wouldn't you? Otherwise they'd all be writing in the same document.
Yes, you can make the document collaborative. You want to get them to write in the same document, you could get them to have it as a collaborative document, but if you wanted them to save their own version of that, you would just tick the share your own file as well.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think that was the only question that we've had, unless anybody's got any questions they want to add.
No, there is a question by Nolene. Specify what are digital leaders, please?
Okay, so wow, yeah, that's an interesting one, because in some schools you give it's nothing to do with the writing process at all, Nolene. What it is you give your children, specific children that want to step up to the plate of being a digital leader in your school, the opportunity to take ownership and decisions on behalf of children in the school, their peers, for things such as e-safety, how to stay safe online, how to use technology in the classroom. So there's a lot of schools that use those digital leaders who get chosen by the teacher or chosen by the class, who want to do these roles, that will ensure that other children in the class know how to use the tablets correctly and efficiently, or find new ways of using the tools, the digital tools that you've got, whilst also ensuring that children know that they shouldn't be going on TikTok, for example. I've worked with digital leaders in London schools, and I'm ever so impressed every time I meet them to the level of knowledge of ways to stay safe, how to do firewall filtering at home, and what's really interesting is these digital leaders are happy to work with parents as much as with other children in other year groups too. So you'll often find that there's a year 5 child who's a digital leader that will go and help out in year 2 and in reception to talk about what will happen is when they're using technology as they progress through the different age ranges of children in the school. Really fun idea, great for developing confidence of children. And once you see a child that's gotten into the role, you then see how much they're not only able to develop themselves as individuals, but also ensure that the policies and procedures of the school for acceptable use of technology gets put into practice on a daily basis. Thank you, Nolene, for pointing that out. Okay, well, I think that sort of wraps this session up. Tanya, did you have any other questions?
Yes, can you show them the leaderboard so we motivate?
Do you know what? I told you I was going to use this, and I didn't. I did touch on this earlier on. This is fantastic. In one of the extra things that we've got in J2E is a tile called J2 Write, which comes with lesson plans for writing activities. So do have a look at those for the different age ranges. But when you get a chance, click on J2 Write and have a look at schools, because I am so impressed. Because I live in the London region, it shows the people in the London schools in my area that have been blogging most recently. But if you pan all the way down further, look at that beautiful island down there with the pins on it, because right now it shows the top 10 schools with the most blogs published in the last 7 days. And 3 of the top 10 schools are in Malta. Yay! Big round of applause. Fireworks, please. You've got St. Teresa College, Birkirkara, St. Thomas More College, Dayton, and you've got St. Thomas More College, Marshalscala. Let's have a look at some. Let's go from bottom to top. Published October. Brilliant work, well done. So students have been writing about orange juice, about Neil Armstrong. I'm sorry, my Maltese is still not good enough. I can't work out what that is talking about. Great ways of presenting their work, all done on the 28th of October. And there's work that's in older posts as well. Some really good stuff. Let's have a look at St. Thomas More, Dayton. Fabulous. So this is all that's happened today. In fact, I think this has just happened. So Sharona is writing about Vesuvius, and we can go and have a look at that post. The volcano of Vesuvius is found in Italy. It is nearby Naples, Pompeii. Fabulous. Brilliant work. Let's go and have a look at the number 157 blog posts published this week. St. Teresa's College, Birkirkara. Brilliant. Writing about senses, about friends, more about senses and friends. Or somebody's been paid off by the headmaster. Back to school. I'm happy to go to school, and I like school, and I do like my headmaster too. That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So full congratulations to those schools. Which of you are going to be taking part in that? I will make a point of the next presentation that we do, the next seminar that we do, we'll have another look and see which schools are on the leaderboards next week. If you've got any questions of the things that we've been talking about today, please do get in touch with Tanya directly. Tanya has a direct line into me and into Nikki as well. So a pooled knowledge of things, all things J2E here. We'd be glad to help, glad to support and provide you with additional resources too. I hope you found that session useful. Thank you once again, everybody. And if you would like to have a look on our Twitter feed as well, at J2E_com, it's full of wonderful things that people are writing about that their students have been doing using J2E too. Let's have a look at that. So here is some work that's been happening by students in Wales and students in schools all around the world as well have been using here, sharing their work, not necessarily on Webby, but in safe form on Twitter here too. Might give you some ideas, might give you some opportunities to also share back. It'd be great to see your work up here. We always do try to retweet the good activities that we see being put up here. And if you wanted to do that, we are at J2E_com, or you can find us on Facebook as well. Thank you once again, everybody. Thank you, Nikki, and especially thank you to Tanya and to Keith for joining and getting this session, making it possible. We really do appreciate that, and we look forward to the next one on Wednesday next week too. That's enough from me. Time for a cup of tea. Bye, everybody.